let me see you. Fuck you.
This is for love, man.
Nah, fuck.
Don't kill love.
Talk hands in the air, let me see you. Fuck you.
This is Tall Can Audio. How do you like me now?
Let's do this!
1, 2, 3, 4.
Come on, everybody get loose tonight. Put my hand in the air, feeling alright. We don't care if it's dead, cause the music is tight. Let me hear you say, yeah, we can do this right.
We're marking 8 years of this shit. Since May 15th, 2015, it's been nothing but beer, sports, and talking stupid. On behalf of everyone here at Tall Can Audio, thanks for having terrible taste.
Come on, everybody get loose tonight. Put my hand in the air, feeling alright. We don't care if it's dead, cause the music is tight. Let me hear you say, yeah, we can do this right. Come on, cook, baby, come on. Cook, baby, come on. Cook, baby, come on, everybody. Light the candle!
There we go, off and running again on the 8th birthday of the Tall Can Audio podcast. Matt Robinson, Rob Christie, what's happening, man?
I missed the tee off with the light the candle to finish.
Yeah.
Right after the I love it. I love it. I miss it, man. I miss the salads.
We tried to throw it back to as many things as we could there, right?
That's true. Don't kill love too, man. I love that.
Love. I'm out to do it, man. I'm gonna kill it. But yeah, a little bit of the salads. We've got both Brian and Amy, who both introduced several hundred episodes each over the years. The old audio whiplash. How do you like me now? Yeah, man. Been, I don't know, it doesn't feel like 8 years. Because I guess really it's been way more than 8 years. We just didn't include the microphones until 8 years ago. But
Correct.
Sitting around drinking beer and talking stupid wasn't new.
No, that was just, as you say, we've just introduced the mics to that.
Yeah. The world needs to hear this.
Think about an 8-year-old Matt and what you were
An
doing.
8-year-old Matt?
Yeah, an 8-year-old Matt. Well, you were like at 8 years old.
Not that different than now, really.
Oh, I had a crazy good bowl cut. I loved it.
I was probably still rocking a fairly curly mullet.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
Well,
I was to recall 8 years old.
That's what your dad's still rocking.
They've run in the family, man. That's what we do. So we're on social media at Tall Can Audio. Give us a follow there and make sure you are subscribed to the pod. Man, we picked up a lot of new listeners here over the last month or so. Some of them from the Leafs episodes we've been putting out. We put out an episode last week where I gave my thoughts on the Ryan Reynolds situation. Got a lot of good feedback on that from Sen's Twitter, which is not a Twitter that usually gives me positive feedback. So welcome to you if you've jumped in here lately. We're not going to do a whole lot here to celebrate 8 years, but we got beers that mark the early days of the pod. We threw back there some of the music, and a little later on, I'm going to play for everybody our first promo. If you remember, Brian made us a commercial. We'll get to that a little later on, but we did mention Day One beers, man. What do you got over there?
Day One beers. Yeah, pre-craft.
Yep.
Right? This was just
At
a
least for us.
drinking. Yeah. Well, and in terms of what we were drinking, there was all kinds of craft available, but it was, and in the early days, we drank way more beer. There was more loaded shows.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like that first clip, as we teed it off there, Don't Kill Love, that's that one shitty USB microphone in the middle of it. Like, those are our punk rock days, right? Where it's unpolished.
Garage band.
Yeah, basically. And as you said, a lot more beer.
A lot more beer. There was times I'd leave out of here, there'd be, 8 pints probably, because we do like 3 shows.
Yeah, that's true.
Per week, and then we would sort of break them out into 40-minute shows.
Yeah.
And so each show would have like 2 beer, and there'd be a pre.
Plus,
and
probably have one before, yeah.
And then quite often, if you've had enough, you're like, I'm just going to have one more because that's really what I need.
Sure.
And I remember the beer math. The beer math when I'm a younger guy, high school into college, and same for you, I'm sure. The little bullets, the 355s.
Right.
That's what beer came in.
Yep.
Right? You had this, and then
the tall boy.
It just became every beer was a 440. I don't know what this is, right? 440, right around there. And you're like, that's just, if I drink 4 beers, I'm like, it's like an extra beer.
Equivalent to an old 6-pack.
Yeah. And so you start to drink 8 and you're like, oh, that's the equivalent of 12 beers. And you're like, who says I'm rolling out to drink a dozen beer? I do.
Happy Tuesday.
Yeah, this is Sunday night.
Right.
Happy Sunday night. But I'll see you on Monday. I'll see you on Thursday, and maybe a Friday show, whatever
Sure,
it was,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
We would do a couple of, something really current sports-wise. We'd do a Whiplash, which would be non-sports, right?
Yep.
That would drop somewhere else. And then something that was
Would keep.
Would
just a
hold.
debate, right, of something best 70s Team Canadas or something.
And,
right?
see, and this was, if I think about some of the stuff we did early on, I loved we did a show on best covers,
Yep.
right? So best songs we loved, we each came with sort of 5 or 6 songs that were where the cover was better than the original,
Yes.
in our opinion.
Right.
That was awesome. And I think about that, I don't know if I've ever put more time into something on this show than crafting the all-time Team Quebec versus your all-time Team Canada.
Minus Quebec.
Right.
Yes.
And so we had the huge debate over Denny Potvin,
Right.
right? Where he was born versus where he was raised, right? I needed Potvin on Team Quebec, right? He was born in Hull, raised in Vanier, I think. So I needed him on my Team Quebec. But yeah, those sort of things where we just had
A little more experimentation.
no penetration. Full-on experimentation. So, yeah, those sorts of things through the years, right, that have sort of gone by the wayside, right? But that there were lots of sort of free-form idea sharing.
We did an entire episode that was nothing but breaking down the Mark Borowiecki, Eugene Melnick interview between two ferns set up there that they had, and just ripping it, like literally line by line,
Yeah.
tearing it apart.
and
So a
that's
lot
got-
of different.
That's got fresh life here with Boro's retirement.
True, yeah.
And it's too bad because just before he got traded, I wanted the library to do get a senator to sort of work with an advertising campaign. And I thought, what would be better than borrow a book
Okay.
with Mark
Yeah,
Borowiecki?
okay.
Just his face on the side of a bus saying,
That's good, Rob. I like that.
borrow a book.
Yeah.
Pretty
clever,
with his
man.
teeth out.
Yeah.
Gotta be. Come on, man. And so then he got traded and he's gone, but now he's retired.
Maybe there's still a chance. So
And-
you're saying there's a
And
chance.
exactly. So I'm hoping. A guy can dream.
So are you going to tell us what beer you're drinking? It's a day one podcast.
Did you ask that?
I did.
Did you ask that a while ago?
Did day one beers?
There's echoes of that. Yes. Sorry, I'm not, that is also echoes of day
That
one.
is something that has never changed. 8 years.
Matt asked the question.
Rob's got something else preloaded.
Maybe Rob answers it. Maybe Rob doesn't. We are recording this on Mother's Day. I've taken down a couple of coffees with Irish cream. I've taken down a couple of Prosecco and grapefruit juices. Pint in the green room.
Yep.
This does have echoes of early shows.
Early shows, yeah,
where,
okay.
you know what? Gritting, greased, and gassed. I am drinking a Grolsch, Matt, to cycle back to the 10-minute ago question you asked.
Yep.
I loved a Grolsch in the early days when I was getting crazy and experimental with moving away from sort of your
Labatt
Molson
50.
Canadian, your Budweiser, your 50s. I loved a 50. Yeah, Grolsch. Grolsch came in the flip-top cap, right? It had that little bit of piney, a Dutch lager with that sort of, it had that hint of pine to it.
Opposed to a Dutch rudder. That's-
Double Dutch rudder, my friend.
wow. He has that a cover. Having right at it.
Anyways.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I loved it it's a nice crisp lager, but it had that sort of slight pininess that gave it it sort of separated it from your normal lager. So the Grolsch is what I'm drinking, and I've loved it. I've loved it always.
This was one of the ones, like I said, as a day one, early days of the podcast before we got into the craft thing. It was a lot of Grolsch. It was a lot of the one that I have here, Harp,
Yep.
which,
King of lagers, in my opinion.
yeah, and like that was an easy one for me even earlier on when I was starting to learn about imports and things like that. Like this one in a room like with your college buddies who are still drinking, like this felt exotic, even
Yeah.
though it's still just another.
100%.
I'm doing something different than everybody else, right? But are you really? Yeah. But Harp has always been an easy go-to, right? And if you're not sure what you want to do that day, how many you're going to have, what your guest might be into, Just grab 612 Harp. You won't disappoint anybody, right? It'll be easy enough.
And it comes out of St. James Gate.
Yeah.
So same place that does Smithwick, same place that does Guinness, and same place that does Kilkenny's. That's what I'm going with.
Okay. Throwing it down.
I am throwing it down with
Fairly tentative.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say with authority. No, it's actually more tentative. But yeah, I always, as soon as mid to late '90s, I started getting to Europe on a regular basis, and the British Isles. That was always clearly Grolsch and the Netherlands, not in the British Isles.
True.
But I do love, and along the lines of a Kilkenny's, or you get into any of the English bitters, that was always my go-to before a Guinness.
Right.
It was a nice entry point, right? Your English bitters, your Caffreys, your John Smiths, your Flowers, all those gorgeousness, Tetleys, just to me. So the English beers were always my go-to when I started to be more welcome to your English pints years.
Right.
Right. So
years.
Yeah, and it's funny because you being younger and you rolled into the scene as a late teens guy, right?
Yeah.
Or even early mid-teens at some point. You were always a little more tentative.
Yep.
Right, in terms of working your way into or away from the known, but look at you now. People are phoning.
Look at me. Look what it's done to me.
People are phoning you up on the radio.
Yeah.
Matt, beer expert.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, hey man. Yeah, I'm just saying. But I think your beer tutelage. Yeah, you've done well. You've done well, Matt, over the years.
Thanks, man. So it's a harp.
I think you've had good.
I knew this was somehow going to circle back around to.
You've had good influences.
I'm going to say, though, first and foremost, it was your brother who hit me with the Tenants. It was the first big step away from.
Yeah.
He started looking at me and my bland beer takes and whatever. He's like,
and ridiculing them.
Yeah, and I think you'll be okay with this. Just try this. Like 12 of them later, you're like, yes.
Well,
good.
And see, it's a bit malty, right? It has a bit of that. You've gravitated towards the reds.
Yep.
And the ambers, and so to me, that's an early tent pole there for you. You've planted that flag, and you're like, that's been true to your beer taste for these many years, almost 23 or so now. Whew, it's a long time, man.
True, man.
So, but yeah, as you've moved your way through a bunch of things and didn't really love the stouts, then you moved hard into the stouts.
Yeah.
And then even on this show in the past couple of years, you're like, nah, I'm not a huge IPA guy.
Yep.
I hear you on the radio recommending a West Coast IPA.
True, man. Yeah.
So Matt, wearing his big boy pants, has come. He's look at that.
He wears big boy pants.
Yes, for sure. So they may have an adult diaper on the inside too, not just the pants.
Right.
We're doing
Well,
it.
if we're going to sit here and have
8 pints or a dozen
that is
pints.
another staple of the early shows. I don't know how to edit yet. We're sending these to a guy named Brian, who you heard his voice there, and you still do often as the show starts. He edited the early episodes for us as well. And to limit that, I would often see Rob get up from the table as I'm mid comment, statement.
Vamping.
And Rob's got to piss. And so since I don't know how to fix this later, I just keep talking, right? Like and eventually Rob slides back in and responds to something I've said or what. And eventually people caught on, right? You start to, as the audience grows, it's like, oh, that was a Rob piss break. Matt's been talking for 2.5 minutes uninterrupted.
How abnormal.
Because otherwise Matt gets interrupted. We know Rob's gone because
can't be anybody there. But I think that's gone a long way to your ability to do it.
Oh, you were doing me a solid.
No. But I'm just saying that life on the rocks, right?
Yeah.
You got to thrive.
Yeah.
You got to survive, or
Rob takes just as many pisses during these shows as he ever did, but I'm able to
perhaps
delete
more.
them. And
perhaps more.
True.
Rob's not getting younger. Rob's getting older, right? And that just gets worse.
That's true.
Yeah. I'm thinking about a catheter. There should be a tall can audio catheter.
We can brand them and
yeah, no, for sure, man.
Yeah. And you're giving me shit for the adult diaper over here.
And I'm not giving you shit. I'm just merely suggesting not a bad
I
idea.
don't want to just put on a diaper. You want to go full catheter over there?
Wow, that would just allow me to drink. Like with impunity, no problems. There's no concerns.
Yeah.
I'm doing it over here. I'm doing my thing.
empty keg sitting beside you, hose
Yeah.
running into it.
Well, this is it, intravenous, whatever,
Yeah.
just having to go at it.
Oh, I was going the other way.
Okay.
Pumping it out into the empty keg.
Okay, see, you know what? With a funnel. I can totally see it.
Okay.
It's your carpet in here. You're not overly concerned about that. One of those 70s linoleum floors is what you need here. Mop in a bucket.
Yeah.
Rob's side of the table.
This weekend, we saw the. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but it did kind of come to my attention here, and I've sort of been following it. But over the course of the weekend, we saw the Red Blacks open up training camp and camps across the CFL get up and going. I'm just sort of curious, when we talked at the end of last season, you'd sort of had your enthusiasm for the CFL stomped out of you by another pretty lackluster Ottawa Red Black season. And I'm just wondering if you're ready to get hurt again. Are you getting... Or are they going to have to show you something before you engage?
Show me, baby.
Yeah.
Show me, baby. And my interest in the CFL, you know, as somebody who's had seasons tickets to not as far back as the Rough Riders, went to a pile of Rough Riders games when I was young, but had Renegades tickets, season tickets for the whole, you know, whatever, 3-4 years, and then picked it up again with the Red Blacks. And so, I want
They've hurt you.
Yeah, and you want to see, well, the history of Ottawa football sucks. The early Red Black seasons were an anomaly, right, to Ottawa football.
Well, not the first one.
No, okay,
We were just willing to be patient with the
yeah,
first
well,
one.
because it's an expansion team,
Yes,
right?
of course.
And again, I was at every home game those years when we saw them lose to BC 9-6 or whatever that was, 10-6, and
Right.
you're like, oof, that's a brutal score, right? But yeah, I am always willing and hoping to see the hometown team do well. It just bodes well. But when you have a great venue that you and I have been to, you've been with others, right? And it's a great place to see a game. Like, it's a great place, but sooner or later, you got to fucking win. Like, I like to go and pound pints as much as an ex-person.
But I can do that on my couch with my catheter.
I don't want to see a bunch of dirty Hamilton trash show up and cheer in my building. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And we're a government town, so when the Green Riders show up here,
Oh, yeah.
I say Green Riders because fuck you, single word Rough Riders. What are you doing? But yeah, there's people working for the feds filling that building.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the closest time I ever got to throwing down at a Red Blacks game, I'm sitting in my season tickets, and there's people behind me who are here for the Green Riders game. And so every time there's a big play, I'm up and I'm cheering.
Right.
And the person behind me going, every time you stand up, I can't see the field. Can you not stand up? I'm like, I'm at a live fucking sporting event.
I'm rooting for the home team.
Beat it.
Yeah.
You don't like it? Watch from home.
Go back to Regina.
You know where your view is unobstructed? Watching TSN on your own couch, you fat
I'm
fuck.
going to say anywhere in Saskatchewan where you can see for hundreds of miles.
Days. Yeah. So, yeah, it got a little heated. And I never stopped standing up because,
Okay, so you give me shit about that time at the Jays game.
yeah, but that was very odd in an almost empty dome that you and this guy had this
Once he told me to sit down, I'm not sitting down.
ever.
Ever. I will stand here
I'm going to fight you and your
for the
9-year-old
next
kid.
4 months. And yet there it is, somebody behind you politely asking you to please remain seated. And you're like, fuck that.
Yeah.
I stood for the entire second
Yeah,
half.
well,
I'm
and that
certain
guy
of it.
and his kid should have just moved down. The whole row was empty.
Yes.
Just move the other way.
Right.
You and your kid are not going to get evicted if you sit 4 rows over. It was just, those of you who know, Matt's not overly aggressive,
No.
but his stance that day seemed out of character. And
It may have also been multiple pint
yeah,
fed.
well, they were only $12 a pint, I think.
Well,
right?
and we hit that fucking Kelsey's or Casey's or whatever before we went. So
And then I think we met up with
Scott
afterwards at
over
the
at
Elephant Castle.
No, first it was the Loose Moose, and then over to the Elephant
See,
Castle.
if you're drinking beers at 4 different places in a night, you know the last establishment is not.
And that was where Scott and I formed Simple of the Dog.
Simple of the Dog. Yep.
Good time.
It was that for
When
sure.
is Scott coming on this show, man?
I don't know, man, but I was just talking to him. He's preparing for a cycle from Toronto to Montreal.
It's only a little bit out of the way.
600 kilometers.
Come on
there's
up here.
change, and so he should, but bring the whole peloton up this way.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's doing that. But as I've said many times for you longtime listeners, he is the best Christie brother.
Yeah.
Maybe the least sort of
Objectionable.
abrasive maybe is abrasive is, and maybe that's what it is. Makes him the best. Is he's the good time guy. He brings.
We've had your brother Jeff in here at least once, and there is, as I've said before, there is a lost episode, and it's not lost. I have it. It was just such a gong show. It went unreleased. A few too many in the green room before firing up the studio with Jeff that day. And
the thing I remember most about that was two things really.
Yeah.
It's Jeff doing this. You're like, hey buddy, you
don't have to deep throat that.
You can lean
microphone.
back off the mic just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then he would do a lot of talking like this, like, hey, man,
Yeah.
as he was reaching into the cooler.
Right.
And that was the other thing was,
The Winnie the Pooh moment.
exactly, if you can think of Winnie the Pooh with his head stuck in the, it's Jeff with his cooler beside him, and you could hear the clang, clang of the empty, probably Grolsch or Sapporos.
Sapporos, I think.
And it's just this empty sound. He's like,
So he's digging through, looking
I
for
found
a
it.
full one.
And he's like, the pod's going to last at least another 15 minutes because I've got one more beer.
Yeah, we got to get Scott in here at some point. So we'll do that. But yeah, for me, man, the CFL,
All right, that's where we were.
we're keeping true to our roots here, man. As they fire up camp and the Red Black, look, as a Leaf fan, maybe this is just I'm ready to get hurt again. I think
Heart is open.
Yeah, the offensive line has been reinforced here pretty nicely. I like that you're going to get your quarterback
What do
back.
you know? Mazzoli back and hopefully healthy.
Right. They just re-upped there on Friday. Jalen Acklin gets a new deal, which is going to be terrific for them. And it just feels like, some of the moves they made in the offseason, especially around that offensive line to protect Mazzoli, if you can give a guy of that quality a little bit of time and not have his femur snapped in half by a cheap shot, you have a chance to do some things here. And I'm not saying they're going to win the East or anything, but I am confident
Feels like
they'll win at home.
Feels like winning the East is always on
It's
the table
reachable.
as
Yeah,
a
no,
possibility.
it's true.
That's never out of reach.
Well, do you remember last year we got halfway through the season, the Red Blacks had one win, and you were still like, well, we're only 2 games out of first.
Yeah, well, and it got to the end where you're like,
East
if we
stinks.
win 4 of the next 5, we're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like, you haven't won 4 games all season. What makes you? And this is the sports fan in all of us, right?
Yeah.
If I just go 4 to 5, and you're like, fuck, you haven't won 4 games all season. What do you mean? What makes you think that you can win 4 in the next 5?
This is all hitting very close to home for Leaf fans.
Nothing.
We'll
nothing
talk about that here shortly, too.
Is actually what makes you feel that.
Yeah, but it was just the East was so bad, no one ever made you feel like it was out of reach. So, to me, I'm intrigued by some of the things they've done, and
New coaching staff.
Yep. Yeah, Bob Dice seems to have everybody fired up. And,
And we had Lapo on the show.
Yeah.
So I think when do we see Coach Dice on the
Dice,
show?
we've asked Hoff.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
a
Okay,
lot
all
of
right.
things,
I
man.
know. And Hoff is
Hoff's one of those people though you got to keep at him. He's got a lot going on, and so
he's a busy man.
Yeah,
he's
sure.
a busy man, and good to the show. So keep going, Hoff. Keep doing your thing.
Look, we're going to save a little bit of the hockey for a little bit later on. We got the Sens to talk about. We got the Leafs certainly to talk about. The Oilers still in it. We should probably talk about them a little bit. But I did want to touch on the WNBA game that went on down in Toronto at Scotiabank Arena on Saturday. Sold out for an exhibition game between Minnesota and Chicago. And by all accounts, just rave reviews, the energy in the thing. When they were panning around the crowd, you could see just huge numbers of girls in the crowd, right? That this would have been huge for parents taking their girls, or girls
Dragging their parents.
maybe more accurately
Yeah, it's
sometimes, right? But just some athletes, some not, some just there to support the thing. When the commissioner of the WNBA came out about 70 minutes before the game and held her press conference, even she kind of looked around and wow, at the number of media that was there. It's been a long time rumored that Toronto has been in the mix to get an expansion franchise, and they did comment on that They have sort of 10 cities in mind, and Toronto is on that list. I wonder what you take away from an event like this that was clearly in the moment and like sold out incredibly quickly. How much you can take away from something like that. I know I've often been critical, I don't want to be too much of a hypocrite here, of the idea that, hey, the Jays come to Montreal for 2 games every spring, sell those out, and Montreal goes, see, we're still ready to support an 81 home game season, right? Like, how much can be drawn from a singular event like this, and do you think it's representative of, the demand in Canada and in Toronto specifically?
Well, I can only go by the experience.
Yeah.
So I've the only NBA, I don't care a lick for basketball of any variety. But I have been to a couple games.
Right.
I saw back in the early pre-Raptors, I was at a Philadelphia
Huskies game in the
76
70s.
an Edmonton Grads game in the 50s. I was at a Philadelphia 76ers Detroit Pistons in the Sky Dome.
Nice.
Right? Curtain up.
Yeah.
And
Back when they used to call it the Sky Dome Theater or something.
And so I had a chance to win a stack of compact discs as tall as Isaiah Thomas. Just that's going to date the whole thing.
Wow.
Maybe 90. But like the bad boys are either just coming off, like Detroit's a big deal.
Right.
And it was an awesome event. And then clearly Toronto has shown with the Raptors, even from the early days, even from the Orlando Miller, Damon Stoudemire kind of, that it's a basketball town.
Yeah.
And I look at it, the Dome they had big crowds there for that in the, as you suggest, the theater.
Yep.
They've embraced the.
Remember everybody always talks about, if you're a Raptors person, the first time Michael Jordan came to Toronto and how wide they tried to push out that curtain, right, to 35, 40. I think it holds the record for biggest crowd ever for an NBA game, was the first time Michael Jordan came to the Sky Dome.
Yeah. So I look at that and how great, how successful that is in terms of how wide the tent is for basketball in Toronto. And it's a multicultural, it's everybody's there.
Right.
Everybody is represented in the Raptors tent. And I had boots on the ground at the game last night, right? My sister and her husband and the aforementioned younger brother, Scott.
Nice, okay.
They were all there. And I was talking to Scott this morning as he was FaceTiming my mom for Mother's Day. And
right.
He said it was awesome. It was a great event. And so my sister and her husband are huge WNBA fans.
Okay, nice.
So to me, I think the way Toronto has embraced basketball in general, I totally see it as, do I think 19 and change is possible every night?
No.
Probably not. It
Average attendance, I did some research before, across the WNBA, depending on the year, somewhere around 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people.
See, I think Toronto could better that.
I do too. And it depends where you ask them to, like, this is important, right? We've seen this happen before. If they're going to average, let's say above league average, let's say they're going to do 9 or 10.
Right.
You don't want them at the ACC.
Do you put them in the Rockarola Center or whatever, the Coca-Cola Center?
I think it's now the Coca-Cola Coliseum.
Yeah, which used to be called the
Ricoh Coliseum.
Pap smear.
Yeah, close enough. There's
Ricoh!
There's enough OHL size barns around the GTA, or you could go out to Brampton or Mississauga where the Raptors 905 play. Like, we've seen what it does, like for the Argos, or for when you play and even draw a decent crowd of 22,000 people in a 50,000 seat building. It looks
terrible,
dead, and it kills the vibe. It doesn't make it look like any fun. I would love to see them go to, maybe it is Coca-Cola Coliseum, right? Maybe 8,000, 9,000 and fill that thing up every night. I think you could do that,
well,
right?
Here in Ottawa, where they have the CBL, right, and they play out of where the 67s play, and so when they do basketball down there, whether it's U Sport and you get 5,000 or 6,000 people in a venue that is meant to hold 5 to 7. It's electric, man, and that's what you. That's
remember
what
when the Alouettes moved out of the Big O
to McGill Stadium.
Yeah,
Percival
Molson Stadium or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And on campus at the university. And all of a sudden you go from this cavernous 50,000 seat stadium to this more like 18, 19, 20,000 seat stadium. First of all, everyone's having a blast and it creates demand. If you can't just walk up and get tickets, you start looking ahead. I better buy my tickets, right? And it becomes a scene. It becomes an event.
Oh, it's a scene.
It's a scene. And so that was sort of my hope for the Argos when they moved to BMO. It never panned out that way. But I think if you did something like this, and they said they have something like 7 or 8 groups interested in owning a WNBA franchise in Canada. Maybe I'm just a bit of a homer about this stuff.
You're such a homer.
Masai Ujiri is sitting courtside with his family. Larry Tannenbaum there, the chairman of the board for MLSE, was there.
Frank Sinatra?
If MLSE wants to do this, that's where you...
Of course it is.
That's the stable that you want to be in. It gives you access to, all the startup costs that come with having to buy, hire ticketing people and marketing people, whatever. It comes built in. They have access to, Ricoh Coliseum when you want it, or Coca-Cola Coliseum when you want it. And if you have a playoff event or an all-star game where you can do more, you then have access to move into Scotiabank Arena. If they're interested, and I would be very surprised if they weren't, both Kyle Dubas and Masai Ujiri have spoken about being very pro WNBA, wanting to get that done. To me, man, is
Dubas going to be working for the new?
Well, that's a whole other. He may be ready to be their GM.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So we'll see. But it was awesome to see, man. Sold out. The whole thing was orange. That's the color, right? They've got the hoodies. They've got whatever. They sold out of merch by halftime. By all accounts, the crowd was jacked. You mentioned boots on the ground. Our friends Michaela and Vanessa were down there for She's Got Game there on TSN 1200. Their show is podcasted now, which it hadn't been for a while. So they were pretty giddy about getting there beforehand, and I'm sure this coming week they'll have a full breakdown on it. So to me, it was cool to see, man. And I don't think it hurts to have a reception like that and a crowd like that and buying up merch like that when you're trying to convince them that. Yeah, I know you got other cities you're looking at, but
I would be surprised. First of all, I was surprised that it was the first such event. Like my sister said, yeah, we're going to the first ever WNBA game, and then you sent a text last night saying sold out.
Yeah,
and so talking to my brother again today, he's like, yeah, the environment was electric. It was a great experience, right?
Yeah.
And so.
First one in Canada. They've been to Monterey and they've been to some maybe London, somewhere in England.
But to me, I bet you Toronto could be top 5 in attendance.
Wouldn't shock me at all.
And I think if you look at whatever the best WNBA teams, I think are partnered. And again, I'm speaking. This is my ass now talking, which is not also new to the show. That I think you look at the Phoenix operation. I think the best teams are sort of in the same stable as
you want to be tied to
an NBA franchise, and for all the reasons
promotion you can do these sorts of things.
I just think that you have to give professional women's sports of this nature, give them the best leg up, which is already in an existing franchise, and let them sort of take roots and grow. But I would be very surprised if Toronto didn't kill this in terms of women's professional basketball. I would be very surprised.
Yeah, same. Well, as you and I sit here on Sunday afternoon, right now the Jays trail the Braves 5-4. They have taken the first 2 games, though, in that series and looked pretty good doing it. Rough weekend week in Philly, 2-gamer, whatever you want to call that, right? After a pretty good weekend down in Pittsburgh. The one thing that stands out to me, just as I was kind of combing through my notes here of things I'd collected over the course of the week. Kevin Gausman has 5 appearances where he's given up 0 runs, and he's only won 2 of them. So he's still, if we talk about him last year being the unluckiest man in baseball, that part seems to be continuing on. But overall, the team looks pretty good at this point. You're still wondering a little bit what's going on with Manoah and that slider, but Brandon Belt appears to have woken up when I was ready to have cut ties with him after.
You actually were last week saying, pretty coming up soon to the time where you want to fish or cut bait with that guy.
Last notch on the belt, I believe, is what I said at that point. But even then, I was a little behind. He had started that week before to heat up, but I just wasn't buying it yet.
Coming into Saturday, he was like 14 out of his last 29 or something along those lines.
Right. Bo's still lighting it up. I don't know, man. We can go in a number of different ways here, but what have you seen out of the Jays? What's on your mind here with them this week?
It's to me the Chris Bassett start on
Yes.
And on Friday night where he went
That nobody watched.
I watched the complete game, 3-zip.
Head to head with the Leafs.
Yeah, I was back and forth, but Leafs thankfully went to overtime. Dan Schulman on Saturday said, "Yeah, you missed the Friday night game. Apparently there was a hockey game happening. The best game, that nobody saw.
Yep.
But the idea, and I'm like, I can't remember the last time a Jays pitcher went complete game." And he said, "Well,
let me help you out with that."
Strangely, you asked.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Mark Burley.
Well, last complete game was Marcus Stroman, but the last complete game shutout was Mark Burley in 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
8 years.
Yeah. It's been a while.
And so that Braves team, they got some killers.
They're good.
And Acuna, I think Acuna he's got to be a top 3 player in,
Oh, yeah.
in the MLB.
And maybe the most exciting one to watch, like just the way he plays the game. And
He's got a cannon for an arm.
fuck yeah, man. Like,
He's coming in today, I think he was 17 for 19 or 18 out of 20 in steals. Got power coming out his ass. Like he's a stud.
yeah.
I don't know what they're paying that guy. Not enough. Strangely, I think
More to come.
I think it's huge. I think they've already signed him to this.
Yeah.
But
Anthopoulos has done a nice job there, right? When they lost Freddie Freeman, he's like, well, whatever. We'll go get Matt Olson and like just backfill it
is
and
that
keep
guy 12
on
feet tall?
rolling. He might be.
Man, oh man, watching him at the plate, I'm like, that guy's huge.
Yeah. And like that division is theirs to run away with, right? The Mets have gotten off to like the Mets had outspent the world coming into this thing.
What about
and
the Pirates though?
And it just again, Rob, in the Central, right? Not the East. So that division is there again to be run away with.
But that's what makes the 2-hit shutout over 9 innings that Bassett
Just
threw.
unbelievable, man.
Well, and we've talked about it before, but after the first game when he allowed 9 runs on 12 hits or whatever it was,
Something terrible.
Bassett,
and then got off to a bad first inning in his second start, the pitch calm thing and whatever. And you're just like, oh my God, this is going to be a bust. And he's been like elite since.
So, and what was it you said? You said, hey, could you find one of the 18 pitches you throw and do it well?
Which one of the 8 pitches you throw
and then in that shutout,
doesn't get crushed?
He had 7 different pitches that he threw at least 6 times.
Yep.
And you're like, that's fucking crazy. Like, that is a huge diversity. And I think
Nobody does that, man. He's got that one big sweeping curve that drops like 26 mile per hour less than his fastball.
And he's throwing it against the guy who caught him for a couple seasons in the 9th inning of that, and he's dropping that on him.
Here it is, man.
And twice, and he's just swinging at it. And you're like, you caught him. You gotta know that's coming. But that diversity, and I look at Barrios had a bit of a grind.
Yeah.
He didn't win the game, but he went almost 6 for, he was at like, honestly, he was over 60 pitches through 3 innings. But he was grinding and grinding. And I gotta wonder if his improved control and locations are also helped by, as Gosman said in the preseason, whoever's going to pitch behind Bassett, because he has such an arsenal, right? And they have for the whole season. And the Jays...
It's like coming off behind the knuckleballer, right?
Well, this is it.
Fucked everybody.
Get right behind Wakefield. Or Phil Necro for you old school listeners. But you sort of have this... He's sat in that 4 spot, and Gosman said, whoever gets to pitch behind Bassett is going to reap the rewards. He's like, everybody in the order.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that through 6 weeks, the Jays have not had a starting pitcher miss a start, which is pretty remarkable, right? When you think about that.
Well, especially because a couple of them were getting just lit up.
Smashed. Maybe can you skip your start?
Well, I wasn't even going to say. I meant by comebackers, right? Being pounded right back off them. Gosman got one, I think, off the hip. I remember
2.
Manoah it was getting a little rough there for a while.
Well, Manoah was going to handle that.
Seemed like
He's
every
a big
other
dude.
start,
He's
somebody was
just
getting smashed. But Barrios is interesting because some of those starts that you're talking about, the one he had on Saturday, there's been one or two other ones where last year he's out in like the second or third inning and you're just blowing up your bullpen. He's found a way, even when he's not elite, he's not blowing up the pen like that. He manages to survive 5 or 6, even when he doesn't quite have it and it doesn't explode on him, right? Which is, I don't know, for a number 4, sometimes you'll take that, right? Just don't kill me here tonight, right? With
you look at
7 innings of relief.
Yeah, you look at Saturday though. He went clean, 3 up, 3 down in the first inning.
Yeah.
And then there was traffic on the bases every inning he was in, right? And
that wears you down.
Yeah. So, but he managed to make it 5 2/3.
Yeah.
When you're like, after the second inning, they had anyways, they did a great job. He did a great job in terms of just as you say, surviving, minimizing. And I think we've hit Atlanta in a bit of they're a bit of a swoon.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Right?
They're not going to have many of those.
Well, and they have like 3 guys with a 900 or better OPS.
Yeah.
If there's not 4 of them, right? Like they were tearing the cover off the ball, and we've sort of hit them in a spot where, it's a combo of good pitching here and them in a bit of a cool spot because there has been some times in this last Braves series where, man, bases loaded with nobody out, and you get out of that without allowing a run. That was if it was in the Red Sox series.
Yeah,
we're giving up a double off the wall in that, right? In terms of
in
these
your dilapidated stadium, we have no idea where that's going to bounce
off that corrugated aluminum wall out there. That when it hits it goes ding.
Yeah,
and you can hear it sounds garbage, man. Like,
yeah.
So, anyways, you can put whatever green coloring and whatever you want to do. It doesn't help. It looks like that turf you put.
Our building's classic. Your building's a shithole.
Yeah,
Get your shit
vintage, Matt, is I think is what we're going with.
Okay, yeah.
But I also said when Romano came in on and how are you feeling about the continued following him down? No commercial break between the 8th and the 9th.
I thought it was cool early in the season, and maybe there are certain moments. Doing it every time, it's kind of lost its. But at the same time, would I rather watch commercials? Not really. So
for sure, get right to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Get right to it. And I find it's way better in the night.
Oh, for sure.
Where you can
they got the light show going and the music and stuff. Yeah,
he's coming out in the afternoon of like the bright blue sky, and you're like,
I'm just waiting though. The way they've built those bullpens, like somebody's gonna blow an ankle coming down the steps or something.
I'm fired up and I'm running down the stairs.
Yeah.
Oh, forget and
a
baseball.
Nice grippy rubber ramp would have been good on our side, and then like a treacherous. Like the stairs from
a fireman's pole.
And on the opposite side for the opponent, I want the stairs from Home Alone with the nail sticking out of it and some kid bombing paint cans at them.
Yeah, okay. See, there you go.
That'd be fun. Come on, baseball. Like let's get after this.
I'm a little over it, and I don't love the tune and the daytime with the late show, and you're like, nah, all right. And I was saying, I was watching it with a couple of people, and I'm like, I'm a bit shaken. Romano is shaking my sort of confidence, right?
Yep.
In terms of as recently as the Phillies.
Yeah.
Midweek, right?
Yep.
Where you're like, blown save, and you're like, oof. But he came in 3 up, 3 down.
Yeah, he's earned the benefit of the doubt for now, but I'm with you. I'm not as confident as I have been at.
And I don't like the hair in front of the ears. What are you doing there, man? What are you doing?
Tough stretch coming up for the next several weeks. It's every day, and it's the Yankees. It's that like tough schedule here ahead.
Well, Braves, Yankees, is it Rays?
Yeah, so you've got a lot of tough games here.
And the stat was the AL East has 5 of the top 9 records in MLB.
Yeah, the 5th place AL East team would be leading 3 or 4 other divisions.
Yeah,
like fucking
garbage. What are you doing to me here? Yeah, but so I am. And if you watch this team, and to me, again, I'm going to harken back to the Saturday game. They did it right. Like, to me, that was a game where they had 5 stolen bases. It just Kiermaier when he's on,
man, still doing it.
And let's harken back to them signing it, and Matt was totally against the signing.
Yep. True, Matt.
And now you had Shulman and Buck Martinez saying, sign him for an extension today. But in terms of what he brings in the outfield, and you watch him stretching that single into a double on Saturday.
He's doing that all the time, eh? Like
I hated that as a Ray. You're like, fuck that guy.
Yeah, he's eating us up every time we play him. But like he leaves the box assuming everything's a double. And if he has to pump the brakes at first, he will. But like he's coming out thinking I'm getting to second.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that when it's and Merrifield, he's getting a semi-regular second base spot duty in the outfield, but you got to have that bat in the lineup. He stole 2 bases on Saturday night. And to me, the pitch clock, the bigger bases, more stolen bases, like Acuna got on there, and like don't even bother wasting the throw down. He's taking second and third. Like just go over there.
Why do you just walk across the diamond?
This is it, right? Single. Go ahead, man. We'll just give you that because I don't want to waste the throw into center, potentially into center field. So the rule changes. I've loved it.
One of the things that people have talked about a little bit is, has the pitch clock helped Kikuchi in that? Don't think, man. You don't have time to think. Just fucking throw the ball. Just throw the fucking ball, man. And there's something to that, maybe, because there was a talk a lot last year that the things they were asking him to do, and when he'd stand there and if he'd start to think,
I want to throw it.
This is my pitch. This is what it'd get crushed again. And so he just goes back to the mound, looks, the thing comes in his ear, right? The pitch comm, and go, because you don't have time to sit and wonder what to do next. And maybe that's doing a little something for him, right?
Just reach back and chuck it, man.
Yep. Just give her.
So I have, and I think I said at the beginning of the season, I'm all in. I watch at least a part of every Jays game, like I don't miss. So I am dialed in. I like the brand of ball they're playing. Good defense. Bo still likes to pitch the odd ball. Like even yesterday or even Saturday, there was this, should have been a double play ball, and you're like, oh, no. And then he pitches the other one away against the Phillies, I believe, and you're like,
well, since he came into the league, he is tied for most errors as a shortstop.
But you watch the way that guy hits the ball.
Yep.
You're like, all right,
I guess it'll be fun.
I'm willing to let it go, right? But I am big. We'll see what happens with the bullpen. I am, Garcia again. There's a lot of
Jimbo.
There's a lot of bit of I don't know, man. I don't know, but I'm loving Swanson.
Yeah,
I'm loving what he's bringing.
He's a hungry man.
What's that?
Swanson's hungry man dinners.
Okay, so I'm like, I thought he's your man,
hungry
man.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. But anyways,
swing and a miss.
So to me, for both of us, I think.
I think so.
It's been a little.
It's funny that it is still only mid-May. So.
Yeah, but it's been a little inconsistent, right? And they are coming into this afternoon's game sort of 6 or 7 above, 23-16, I think, starting today's game. So it's hard to really bitch, but
we're going to do it.
I'd like to see them push for 100 wins.
Okay.
No, really.
I know you would, but to me, we all would.
When you have the rotation you have the batting order you have, and the good fundamental, is the outfield and the 2 corner guys, you can't complain, right? In terms of defense now, I know, but.
What I have sitting here, we're going to take a break.
Is another beer?
Yeah, we're going to get a beer. Gonna have a piss.
Rob says as he's starting to sweat. Like, is there another beer?
But I have found, this is from year 1 of the podcast.
Oh, delicious.
The guy who used to produce these for us and put them together, his name was Brian. He went through a bunch of the early episodes, just grabbed some of the more outrageous moments or clips or crazy shit getting said. But as I listened to it, I'm like, I don't even remember what the hell we were talking about in that one. Like, it's all out of context. If you were listening to those first 20, 30 episodes, it was probably hilarious at the time. I still think most of this is good, but there is a lot of out of context stuff. But it'll give you a feel as we go back 8 years to the stuff that we were talking about and how this show sounded to the tune of Tall Cans in the Air by Transplants, which was something of a theme before we got big enough that I started getting cease and desist letters.
People start to listen because, the music has really changed.
It had to, right? Once people notice your show, now you got copyright infringements to deal with and stuff. But we'll throw this one down here, and we'll see you after we grab another beer. Open up your mind holes. We're about to toss some knowledge in there.
No, get out your fucking umbrellas because it's going to rain cold, hard facts.
And both are completely inaccurate.
Tall cans in the air, let me see it. Fuck you.
I'm feeling slightly intoxicated.
Tall cans in the air, let me see it. Fuck you.
Recognize, bitch. Doesn't it seem like my interpretation of what was stupid might be different than what you thought might be stupid?
That was incredibly cerebral what he just said there. Where am I? Is this fucking spoon clean?
Tall cans in the air, let me see it. Fuck you.
I blew up your loser boyfriend on an asteroid.
Tall cans in the air, let me see it. Fuck
brainwashed, ignorant, great mass that is the general public, which I include myself in.
Right.
It's never fun to go to the movies and have people like inappropriately touching themselves next to you. But it happens.
I seem to be partially insane.
Well, you're drinking.
Oh, lady, you're the last one to hit the button because you're an idiot.
As long as you don't knock over the beers.
No, that's fine.
Hands in the air, let me see it. Fuck you.
It's for love, man.
Nah, fuck.
Don't kill love.
Talk hands in the air, let me see it. Fuck you.
I got shit in my pants. That's how that goes.
You think I give a fuck?
He's like, yeah, going for 2. I give no fucks.
Talk hands in the air, let me see it. Fuck you.
Whose fucking stoner glasses are these?
Talk hands in the air, let me see it. Fuck you.
Nobody lives, nobody get hurt.
Mexican singer's tampon pops out on stage and she finishes the show.
It's bad, I still like the song.
In Rio, honestly, man, I had to buy the 4 square blocks of businesses at a beer because
We're really just testing your scruples.
Exactly. The default is you're gonna die in a horrible,
Fiery.
scalding, burning death.
Well, they'd all be fucking dead.
We'd plummet to the ground in a burning oil can. That's what would happen.
Talk hands in the air, let me see it. Fuck you.
And if you could put your gun away.
Yeah, exactly. Your Glock.
Let me see it.
Yeah, you know what? If you program it to save you, it blows up as you do it.
Instantly.
Yeah, right there in your driveway.
Oh, you lose.
Wrong answer, Nick.
Exactly. Yes. That's the Darwin machine. Yeah, we don't need you anyways. Flip. And I bought a pile of hardcore porn.
A pile.
I don't know how we get in these places.
I just steer us there. Greasy sack is
Your greasy sack, as you. For all you ladies out there, that's airport sack. That's all that is.
I felt like a knob, and I'm pretty sure my uterus fell out on the floor. Like, it was bad.
I'd like to say that's probably we've had a lot of things on this show. Probably the first time we've
Uteruses?
heard the word uterus on the show.
And they do fall out. Oh my god, it was horrible.
Oh, time to wind this one down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cut the cord!
we're done here. There's year 1 highlights of the Talking Audio podcast. There are moments I remember. The idea that if you program it to save you, it blows up immediately was
Self-driving cars?
self-driving cars that would the computer would make the decision to save the most possible lives unless you override it to no, always save me. And we thought that was a fairly shitty thing. So your car would just explode in your driveway.
Yeah, no problems.
Yeah.
We'll figure this all out.
I killed your loser boyfriend on an asteroid was what I thought should have been the ending to Armageddon. Instead of dad staying behind.
Sad-faced.
Remember, having to drop
Bruce
the
Willis.
nuclear weapon. We left your fucking boyfriend up there. Fuck him.
Sorry.
Fuck you, Ben Affleck.
Well, we can all relate to that.
Yeah, for sure, man.
We all have in-laws.
Yeah.
And the airport sack
The airport sack was a
was the baby wipes on especially that sort of, Canada to Australia flight.
long flight.
Somewhere in between, you need the undercarriage to get a good swab. It's a long time, man, to be seated. The temperature gets warm. You're like, I could use a little refreshing.
But I think I wasn't far off earlier when I said our punk rock days. The unpolished A content and then B sound quality. Like you can still tell it's just that one USB mic. It's
Not bad, though.
Yeah.
Not bad. We're speaking in between pillow
Whose
cushions.
stoner glasses are these?
Well, there's a lot of
spoon clean.
there's a lot of things you hear in that where you're like, I don't.
Yeah.
I
8
think-
years ago. Right?
And I think the one was that from the 100th episode with the inappropriate touching in the theater next to you.
No, way before that. That would have been like episode 30 or 40
Okay.
or something. But
All right. Anyways,
Yeah.
to me, there's lots of gold in there.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of gold in there, and that does give you a good idea
where this started.
of the origins, the genesis of this podcast. Which, again, worth noting. For those of you picking up and leaving at different times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always saw it as we would get legitimate people on here talking about legitimate things, and your idea was always, it's supposed to be. It's
Pub
supposed
talk.
to be about pub talk. It's supposed to be about people listening in on a personal conversation, which is funny. And again, longtime listeners will have no problem believing this. I don't know if Rob ever knew that starting it up. Rob's just showing up drinking beers,
and
at some points gin and tonic,
today.
right?
Yeah.
A pile of gin,
Yeah.
taken down in those early shows too. A lot
Pile of hardcore porn.
Yeah, I'm inebriated. That was it. Or intoxicated,
Slightly
whatever.
intoxicated.
Yeah, whatever it was. You're like, yeah, all right. Well, there's been times where you're like, you got that feeling like, oh man, you overdid it, Holmes. You had too much to drink.
Do you think there's a possibility that Ryan Reynolds had too much to drink and that's how he ended up at some point just spitting out, maybe I'll just fucking buy the Ottawa Senators, and then woke up sober one day and I'm not doing that. That's a fucking terrible idea.
Well,
we had on Thursday, I guess it was, at 5 o'clock, Emily Kaplan reports that he and the Remington group have pulled out. I recorded a show that night saying, maybe not. With 3-4 days ahead of time, you might be trying to get somebody's attention, right? As we sit here now, this will drop on Monday morning. That is deadline for the bids.
Deadline day.
Yeah, for everybody's bids, and we haven't heard another update on it. That doesn't mean someone else hasn't reached out to
Ryan
him
Reynolds.
specifically to join their group,
Right.
or what might happen there. But what was your take when this all kind of came out that that group was pulling out?
Yeah, disappointed. We don't need a celebrity to be part of the ownership group. Somebody put it way more succinctly than I could have, at least on the moment. The reality is, we need an ownership with deep pockets and stay the fuck out of the way in terms of the running of the team.
Yeah.
That's still a possibility. Reynolds was always, when you look at what he's done with Mint Mobile, what he's done with
Wrexham.
Aviator Gin, and especially what he's done for the brand of a 5th Division soccer team.
Which he apparently decided was a better investment than the Ottawa Senators.
So either way, right, anybody with 100 million Twitter follows or Instagram, whatever it is not a bad idea of what that could do. That can only help the brand. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there are still groups, and I don't need a celebrity. I don't. So I liked him for all the reasons I just mentioned.
Sure.
I don't need The Weeknd, or I don't need Snoop and the
Snoop group
and the Nico Sparks group. I need somebody who is going to put a pile of cash in here and stay the fuck out of the way. So I was disappointed, sort of, but it's not the end of the world, right? For me.
Yeah. One of the things that I said on Thursday night when I recorded was, this is, and maybe it was unavoidable, like you can't control who gets involved, but there is now anger and frustration and disappointment where there never should have been any.
Right.
When you look at where this thing has come from March of 2022 when Melnick passes away to where it is now, this path has been
arrow up.
Just fantastic, right? Like, this is going to end up in a good place.
Yeah.
In a very good place. And the ride on the celebrity thing was fun. Seeing Snoop talking on First Take on ESPN to Stephen A. Smith about the Ottawa Senators is something that you never would have seen. Ryan Reynolds on The Tonight Show talking about the Ottawa Senators. All of it has been awesome. But if you just, in an alternate universe, remove all the celebrity from it, and you just go from March of 2022, and we're like, okay, we're going to start to put together the process, and then we'll do.
Are they going to sell?
Who's going to, run that? Who's letting people in to see the books? And we're hearing somewhere in the neighborhood of $650 million. And then a couple months go by, and we're hearing like $800 million. And a couple more months go by, and it's like $1 billion. Like, everything about this has been all upside. But in between there, everybody sort of got attached the idea of Ryan Reynolds as well.
Well,
and
you see him in the
of
suite
course,
here.
giving the wave.
You see him sitting with Lundqvist at MSG.
He's coming in and meeting the mayor, right? Like, all of these things.
Well, he's taking the selfie, and whose photo is right behind him? Daniel Alfred's.
That's probably just coincidence, right?
Coincidence,
Couldn't have? Yeah,
for
sure.
But you also have Bettman saying, hey, we don't
Sugar
know
mommy,
who's going to be.
sugar daddy.
We don't know who.
Yeah.
But Reynolds, blank, blank, blank.
This was the whole thing with the Remington group when we all thought Reynolds would probably sit out the bidding process
and attach himself
to the winning bid.
winning group,
I will invest with you. Anyone with half a brain would have welcomed him in to be part of that group.
Yeah.
It was brilliant by the Remington group to go, okay, we have a solid bid and we see that everyone's getting attached to him, so we're going to attach him to us. And now that's fallen apart, and it's kind of a bummer.
Who was the Arizona equivalent for Ryan Reynolds when they were looking at the Coyotes?
Pauly Shore.
Encino Man.
Rob Schneider.
I love it. No, we can't do better than Pauly Shore, man. I don't know where you pulled that out of, but that's Pauly Shore is about right.
Yeah,
that's the thing, man.
Yeah, it's just a bummer now. Like the things I was seeing on Sen's Twitter, the texts that AJ and Lee were reading out as the news was breaking about back to this being an embarrassment of an organization and
easy,
a joke of a league. And man, it's never had to be this way. This ownership is still going to be so rock solid. And it just kind of sucks that this is now a point of resentment or anger. Well, I get it. Like you've lost something, but you never really had it yet.
I've borderline berated you over the past couple of weeks about your
any number
fucking lifestyle choices,
fashion sense,
just the idea of nobody wants reasoned takes. People want like crisis, but the reality is every there's a faction of every fan base that is sky is falling, that is Chicken Little, right?
Yep.
And so I think for the most part, there are those who go, yeah, you know what? It's too bad. And you did think it was just
too bad.
You just thought it was a fait accompli, right?
Yeah.
That this was going to happen. And then it didn't. But at the end of the day, there are still ownership groups. Like to me, I've always liked the Andlauer group.
Mm-hmm. A little history there with the Canadiens.
Yep. With
Kimmel Group's got some history with the Penguins.
AHL, there's just a bunch of things happening, right? And so you go, there's guys who are billionaires who are still looking to buy this team. And
with huge plans. Like not just the team, right? Like the team is part of for almost all of these groups, a much bigger, whether it's redeveloping out in Canada or
God,
a nightlife
and
zone
that would
else.
be the worst idea ever.
I get it.
If they people will be in this market, people will be disappointed even with a new building in Canada. Right? You have to be, if not at LeBreton, you have to be over near train yards, or you have to be somewhere on the LRT centrally located.
Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah.
LeBreton is bonus because it's tight to Gatineau, the old Hull district of Gatineau.
Yep.
It's right there across the bridge, centrally located for those in the south or the east end. Like to me, you want to, and the condos and the nightlife that go in there would reinvigorate a pretty sort of stagnant downtown, especially as the feds are doing more work from home, bringing more people to downtown. So to me, there's two things that have to happen here. Right, it is an ownership, but those who want to make money, if you're going to pay $1 billion for the Ottawa Senators, and then have to spend $500 or $600 million on a new arena, man, you better be recouping cash from
this is
some
the thing,
kind
right?
of real estate deal.
Like the Ryan Reynolds thing apparently stems from that group asking for a 30-day exclusive window to talk to the NCC and the city and see if you can fix. Because I guess it's down to like 6 acres that the
7.
NCC. Okay. The initial plan years ago, and we talked in the early days of
52?
this podcast, it was a huge piece of property you were going to have to do all this nightlife stuff and other things around it. And at some point,
I love the nightlife.
Everybody moves on without you.
On the disco go round. Oh, yeah.
They've moved on, and it wasn't as good of a plan. So here's 6, build your arena. The rest of it we're doing nothing with. So they want to come back in and go, no, we need something more than that. They want to negotiate. But everybody else, you mentioned the Andlauer group. They have history with the NHL. The Kimmel group has history with the NHL. They know how this stuff works, and they would have raised hell like nobody's business. You're not giving those fuckers extra time
Why
to
do
go
they
and
get
work
more
this
time?
At the same time, if you're the Remington group, and as you said, I'm about to spend $1 billion, I'd like to know I'm going to have some ability to recoup this on other things. I don't necessarily blame them for walking away if they're not sold yet, that their vision can play out the way they want. So it sucks, but the Senators are a piece of a bigger plan here for all of these groups, and that's why I don't think Sens fans need to be concerned at all. These groups,
it's a large piece of the pie, but it is
of course
just
it is,
a piece of the pie.
Yeah, it is the centerpiece of the pie, and that's what they're going to build around. And so, yeah, it's a bummer that Ryan Reynolds is out, but if you had stepped back into March 2022 and said, you'd never heard the name Ryan Reynolds, but that team's going to be sold for like $1 billion. Like, holy Christ!
Well, it's like you see with, a super hot real estate market, and you go, my home is worth $750,000. The house next door, which is a shittier home, just sold for $750.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, then the market cools, and you're like, it's now selling for $650. You go, I've lost $100,000. No, you haven't.
You never had it.
You never had that money.
Yeah.
So it is one of those things where you go, well, you lost something you never had. And so, would it be nice? But at the end of the day,
I was always Team Snoop anyway.
Eyes on the prize, right? Like you look at what, I believe it's Jeffrey Vinnick owns the Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Like you look at what that guy's done. Big, deep pockets, stays out of the way, lets hockey people make hockey decisions, hopefully brings in hockey people to make good decisions here. And we go forward, right? But so to me, it's not the end of the world. People are just fixated on the Deadpool thing. So to me...
Dead bid, I say.
Okay, there. Nice, Matt.
Thank you. The other Ontario hockey team...
Is there two?
There was two.
Oh, there is two.
Yep.
Yes, there is.
Very $1 million man laugh.
Two-time.
Everybody's got a price.
Yep.
They lost. You may have noticed. They're out. 5 games.
Yes.
And I don't know where. Look, I was pretty honest with you when I texted you. I got very little on this because I've talked about it after every game.
Yep.
And whatever. So I don't know what your takeaway was or
Hand
what
over
you
the baton,
wanted
Matt,
to.
and we'll just go.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
You got a dumb face, and I don't like you. All right, that works. It holds. A very sweet face you have. For those who don't know, Matt, it's friendly. It says "hug me."
Please don't hug me.
Just don't kiss me on the lips.
Don't hug me. Don't touch me. Everybody, just stay away from me.
Yeah, that is really the default for Matt.
Yep.
Yeah, and I have no interest in the X and O's, and I've said many times in this podcast, my team has not made the playoffs for, is it 12 years now, Matt? 15?
No.
I do take great joy and passion.
Mm-hmm.
Passion. I draw passion from the Leafs.
And their failures.
And their failures, 100%. And this year... Just fuck off, bitch.
Yep.
Matt's got all kinds of hot buttons over there.
I'm just pressing the buttons here now.
and it just sort of, I don't know, man. This feels excellent. Excellent is where I would go. But watching, and I did. I flipped over to watch the aftermath.
Felt so good he flipped over.
Yeah, roll over. Yeah, they went to the Oilers Vegas game, and I thought, no, I'm going to flip over to Sportsnet 1 and see the post game interviews.
See, I didn't even watch those.
Yeah, well, why would you? And the thing that it comes down to, they spoke to Morgan Riley, who was on the verge of tears. I love these guys. I don't want a thing to change.
I love you, man.
Yep. And you had Mitchie, and you had Austin.
Fuck, man. Thank you, guys.
Well, and Mitch Marner, to me, his was, and again, yeah.
Oh, his was, we all have contracts.
Yes, exactly. And to me, the thing is, you have the reporters, and you see it on Ottawa. I listen to every Ottawa game day scrum. You have the reporter who asks the same question to every person. You're like, ah. And so the person asking, what do you think about this, this core and whatever else? And yeah, Mitch's, to me, that was the best. Well, we all have contracts, and we don't have a say in this. So I'll either see you here. Now I'm paraphrasing and I'm extrapolating out on my own, but we're going to be traded or we're going to be here in October. So we'll see. To me, the difference is there was huge. There was no great sadness. Sort of Morgan Riley crying because he was going to lose his bros. Bruh. That there's got to be changes, but he's saying I don't want to lose anybody. I don't want anything to change. But it's, to me, that is the most fascinating part, right? Is to me there was this huge sort of, yeah, I knew this was going to happen, or I knew there wasn't the past years.
That's how I felt.
Yeah, well, and now the players feel the same way. Which, if there was ever,
But for me, it was since Game 3.
yeah, clearly,
You were, whatever anger or devastation or sadness or whatever there was after Game 3. At that point, you're just, all right, how many is it going to take, right? And
Right.
I think I said this
start the clock.
after, like, going into Game 4, and I think I said it on the post-game show after Game 4. My mood for that was, just go away. Like,
Yeah, you're just going to give me hope.
not even that. I mean, yes, there was a bit
Had
of
it
that.
got to Game 7, would you not have been like,
Of course, man.
fuck you, whore masters? You're going to stretch this out?
That Mark Masters nickname.
And then you're going to stab me in my open heart.
Yep. But this was games 1 and 2. Things went wrong.
Yeah.
And I, as we talked about last week, I remained optimistic would be too strong, but not like, you're down 2-0, but this Florida team's not that good. You might be fine. And you just completely no-show Game 3. And so even in Game 4, where most of the guys did play better, I just went into that with a very just fuck off. Like, all the goodwill that came from winning and beating Tampa,
Yeah.
all of it was just sort of like, you still have that in you to show up in a game that important and literally bring nothing to the table. I was just, let's get on with it. Whatever is about to happen, let's just get to that, because you're not winning this series.
Right. Okay. And that is, to me, there was great resignation. Like, to me, instead of sadness or anger, there was like a shrug of the shoulders with the hand. That little meme with the hands out to the side,
Yeah.
shrug of the shoulders. Like, I don't know, man.
Here we go.
This is what we do. And so it is one of those things where the Leafs are so fascinating because I think Dubas has done a great job. Like, okay, and if I can ask you in a vacuum, do you think that Keefe has done a bad job?
Yes.
Do you think that Dubas has done a bad job?
No.
Okay, perfect. Then there's your starting spot.
Yeah, of course. But Dubas isn't looking for my
No.
endorsement. He may not get to. I don't think there's any chance Keefe is back, even if Dubas does survive.
Which also brings up our DJ Smith,
Yes.
Sheldon Keefe conversation, which isn't a bet because we had no idea. It was just something we dropped
survives
a season
longest.
and a half ago, I think, which was who lasts longer.
And at this point, like, Dubas, to me,
They both could be fired within the next 4
like,
months
literally by
anyways.
4 p.m. on Monday. Like, it's possible.
Well,
it
that's why
might happen while we're sitting here.
That's why I asked you after on my text. I'm like, do you think Sheldon Keefe can make it till Senators ownership change?
Right.
Because that may be when DJ's fate is solved.
Dubas has made mistakes. There's no doubt about it. And you don't have to look any further than Matt Murray.
That reeks of desperation
It does.
as it did last summer,
And
right?
he was healthy
Yep.
by the time they needed him, and they went, nope, Joseph Wall, get in there.
Well,
and Joseph Wall was fine.
And Keefe's when they said, "Did you ever consider Matt Murray?"
Nope.
No. Like, no elaboration.
Cannot be any clearer.
And you're like, we want that guy to be healthy so we can buy him out and get gone. We don't want to
So that
risk.
he can have a great season at Arizona State University next
This
year.
is it. And so to me, it's super interesting because if you fire Kyle Dubas, we've said it on this, both of us, I'm sure, he'll get a job
Perhaps in the next week or two.
in a heartbeat.
Perhaps
right?
in Pittsburgh. This is the interesting. I think Dubas, and it's been reported here, it's been oddly quiet. There's only been one or two people sort of willing to hint at it, that there is dissension between Shanahan and Dubas right now.
Which is strange because
It's his boy.
you're my boy, Blue. They've been sort of at the hip.
Right. And so no one has said anything about what that is over, which guy's trying to pull in which direction, but that there's tension there.
Where's Mark Hunter at?
And so if Pittsburgh was to say to Dubas, come be president, you won't have a Shanahan in your way. Even if he wants to stay here, you can't promote him to president in Toronto. Like you can give him a new contract and leave him here as GM, but unless you're willing to fire Shanahan.
I was going to say, is Shanny untouchable to you?
No.
Here? Do you think Shanny's untouchable to the board?
That's more interesting. He's been here 9 years now. Like, there's no reason he should be untouchable like anybody else. The first thing he did was re-sign Randy Carlyle when that was clearly over, right? Like, that wasn't working anymore. So, you know me, man. I'm a little biased here towards Dubas, right? I like
lead into it, Matt.
I like what he has done for the most, but I haven't shied away from. I did multiple pods last summer going, I don't know what the hell you're doing with Matt Murray, right? With a couple of different things and Dubas has sort of followed the Rob plan. Rob liked Nick Foligno and Rob liked
Rob loved the acquisition of McCabe, O'Reilly.
Yeah. I
Achari.
Think and to be fair, I really liked O'Reilly. I thought that was a good pick. And Achari, for that matter. I didn't like Shen. Now, Shen turned out to be very good.
He's playing in your top two?
Yeah, funny that.
And injuring your goalie.
Yeah, well, the good and the bad that comes with it.
I don't think he made a bad move at the deadline this year.
I don't know.
What would you change?
The only thing I would consider, McCabe was very good in the Tampa series. He was not good in the Florida series. I think, and he almost had to, but if you recall, back at that deadline, the thing that I complimented Dubas the most for on the McCabe deal was
nice shirt.
2 more years at just $2 million. He managed to thread that needle of getting something you needed and having it for. I wonder in hindsight, if you don't swing bigger, because you have to win this year. Stop worrying about next year and the year after. Maybe you should have gone for Orlov, right? Maybe you should have tried to do something a little bigger.
Orlov instead of Gustafsson.
Or instead of McCabe.
Yeah, both, right?
Sure.
If you have that one and you want to fill that one hole, take one instead of two.
Yeah, like get the biggest possible fish that can help you right now instead of also. Now, to his credit, he's looking out for the organization long term, even with his job on the line.
Well, and Orlov got Boston 2 more games than it gave Toronto.
Actually got him several less games than.
No, I meant head-to-head against the Panthers.
Oh, true. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there are things that you can quibble with in hindsight. The biggest mistake that Kyle Dubas has made clearly was being too loyal to this group.
Yeah.
And that's over, whether it's him or someone else.
The thrill is gone.
One of those guys is going to be gone at least. Like, does Austin Matthews just tell you?
See you, Willie Nylander.
I'm walking. Willie's, yeah.
I know.
He's the one who keeps showing up.
I know. And I'm saying
people
at $7 million bucks or whatever it is.
Crazy, but he and Morgan Riley were the heart of this team this offseason and in previous offseasons.
Yeah.
Like
more
Matthews,
affordable contract.
I'm trying to be reasonable about Matthews. 5 goals in 6 games in the first round. Fuck, man. Thank you. Great performance. None in the next round. Like, you fucking loser. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and the snowball that builds, which is, he sort of waits around and doesn't dominate a game like he should. He waits and then comes on at the end. Or it's this idea that a guy like that should be dominating
at this
the game.
point, we haven't yet had the Austin Matthews game where he just takes over,
right?
Like every superstar has had at least a couple of, right? And maybe he just says...
And he has a face that says, meh. Does he not have a face that just goes...
I don't like getting into that stuff. I think it's hard trying to read personality.
Yeah, of course it. Hey, when you score 60-plus goals, you got supreme talent.
And this comes off as loser talk right now.
That's loser talk.
I think we're going to find out in the next day or two he's hurt somehow. Like all year, he's clearly been dealing with something.
40-plus goals is not what that guy's built for.
Yeah, so I don't know what happens now, but it's got to happen fast because on July 1st, Matthews and Marner both have full no-move clauses kick in, and Willie has a limited no-trade kick in. Tavares already has a no-move. So you have to figure out the GM thing right now. And it can't be lukewarm. We'll give you a 2-year deal and see if you can. 'Cause someone else out there's going to give him 5, like Dubas. I mean, right?
Yeah, and the fact that he has no contract.
Yeah, this isn't about firing him. He can walk now.
Yeah.
Like
you can't fire me. I quit. I've said that on the podcast multiple times.
he's back next Sunday.
That's for sure.
Mild pay
Maybe not
raise.
next Sunday, but maybe the Sunday after.
Sure. I don't know now, man. I don't know where this goes. There will be change, but change is not going to be easy. You're selling on all of these guys if you're going to at a low, right?
Well, and because of contracts, short of Nylander, the contracts are all you probably have to.
Tavares isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, you got to take less in return, or you got to eat money. One of the two.
Yeah.
For talents. And to me, as I said to you, I have zero interest in the X and O's of the finish. It's super interesting, and we do have a pile of time moving forward.
Oh, yeah, and there
with
will be
this.
news this week, I would imagine, one way or another.
But it is, to me, the very different feel at the end.
Everybody knows something's...
For sure.
DGB, I sent you a link. Down goes Brown. I don't know if you bothered to read it or not.
Oh, I forwarded it home and never read it.
He had a great piece in The Athletic that was before... It must have been before Game 4.
It was.
And he said, one way or another, this era is over.
5.
They will get swept and get blown to pieces, right? Like,
Yep.
or they will do the miracle thing and come all the way back and never have to be questioned for not having heart again, right? Because if you dig out of that hole and make that happen, you become one of those legendary teams and people have to give you credit. But he said, one way or another, this era is over. And it's over. It's just a question of what happens. They're not rebuilding. This will not get blown up and going down to the studs. But it will change. It will be and you can make trade. Like just last summer, the guy you just lost to, Matthew Tkachuk, told them I'm out. They traded him for, like, the Panthers, trade away Huberdeau and Weegar for Tkachuk. They fire their coach and their GM, and here they are going to the conference final. So you can do... Well, you can make things happen. But
President's Trophy winning team last year, they make that seismic change.
Yeah.
And they scrape into the playoffs. All this talk of, well, this team is last year's president. Yeah. They're last year's President's Trophy winners, and they were like a 20-point, 30-point difference. It's not the same team.
No, it isn't.
But it is a different complexion and approach to it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this Leaf team will be different.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately the cap will grow. I would change the coach.
Yeah.
I would
too.
I would keep the GM. In my opinion,
coach to me keeps looking like he gets rattled. He's tinkering too much. There's no continuity. Every game there's I didn't worry. We'll switch all the blinds, all the pairings. At some point, I understand like being open to it. We used to get mad at Babcock for not changing anything. Patrick Marleau is our top line left winger until he's 48 years old. That's going to happen. This is, could you just give it a minute to marinate and see if this works now?
The blender is always out, right? The blender is always out.
And to me, that's a panic, right? Like that's...
Well, and
I keep going back to the bubble. We had never, that's the first year of, or the second year of Tavares in Toronto. We had never seen him and Matthews on a regular line together. And in an elimination game, they suddenly decide Matthews, Marner, Tavares is the top line. Suddenly Nylander's now back in the middle, which he hasn't done all year. You're like, dude, like.
Seems like a lot.
Chill.
Yeah.
That screams, oh my God, right? Like, fix it, change everything. I don't think you can bring him back.
You overthought it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Overcoach.
And so, to me, that is. But I think he'll also get a job.
He will.
And so
he's not a terrible coach.
No. And really, as much as I love to pile on the Leafs, and honestly, it's my second favorite thing. You got a dumb face, and I don't like you. But the reality is, as gleeful as I am, when you step back and you go pandemic, cap freeze, all these things, and you're like, fuck, it couldn't be
Nobody got fucked harder somehow.
Yeah.
Than the Toronto Maple Leafs.
How good is that?
It's not great.
It's just when you think there's no such thing as a hockey god, and you're like, Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
And he hates us.
Yes. Job, the Leafs.
Please stop smiting us. Like,
Exactly. Locusts.
We
and
get it, man.
all these things. Yes. And so to me, that is, I think on so many levels, the idea that you have a core that is 40 plus million and the cap never moves, you're like, eesh.
Yeah, locked in months before the world closed. You know,
And then you're like, yes, that's great. See, we got these guys locked up. And in hindsight, and I won't turn my back on it. In the early years, you're like, you've paid Nylander way too much for that contract. And
he's the only one you're looking at going, fucking bargain, right?
Yeah. Well, and because he's one of those guys where he went 30 goals in that year, and you go 30, 35 assists, whatever it was, and you're like, I'd like to see more.
Yeah.
Well,
Here it is.
all he's done is do that, right?
And even when you start talking about the way we like to talk about these guys or the media, like I talked about this a bit after Game 5. Mitch Marner is about 1.35 points per game in games 1 through 4 of all of his series. It's like 38 points in 26 games. All the games 1 through 4s through his whole career. He drops to 11 points in 22 games in games 5 through 7 and this round 2. So that guy, as the pressure ratchets up, I don't think he stops trying. I think it's the opposite.
For sure.
It locks him up.
Maybe too hard.
William Nylander goes from being in games 1 through 4 about 0.6 points per game where you're like, man, I wish he'd start faster. But he goes to about 0.9 points per game in games 5 through 7. So people don't love the way he plays or his personality or something, but that's a guy who ramps it up when you need him to.
And I always rip on him.
Yeah.
Like to me, he is the lightning rod.
But those are the numbers. Like,
and all I'm going to say is, he has that enigma kind of thing all about him. I think Chris Cuthbert called him the mercurial.
yes.
And so the thing is that,
And he wasn't perfect either. Early in the series, he made some baffling defensive gaffes.
But that quote they had from him after game 4 or 3, with 3 or 4, whatever it was, and he's like, "Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait because this is when it matters most."
When he ties it up in game 5.
Bad goal though, man.
Yeah, fine,
I'd like goalie Bob to grab that.
But that's a great shot. He's waits and waits and waits until he has to drop, and as soon as he starts to go down, you whip it up over the shoulder.
yeah,
There's
well, it's a
something to
hard
that
shot
too.
for sure.
Yeah.
But I would like that short side taken away if you can.
But in terms of passion, right? If you want to get into Willie doesn't care and these sorts of things, they show his face. They show the goal up on the big screen, and then he sees his own face on the bench up on the big screen, and he throws his arms up and goes, "Let's fucking go!" to the crowd, right? Like he's.
Yeah.
Let's do this, right? That's a guy who cares, right? For all the times people say he doesn't, that fucking guy cares.
Well, because he delivered his, I can't wait because it's the biggest moment.
Yeah.
Right. But he delivered it in a deadpan delivery, right? And so, but he's saying that is the thing you want to hear.
Yeah.
And you hear it from that guy, and for some reason you go,
Right.
you're not going to do shit.
Meanwhile, in the same presser, Mitch is like, "We don't listen to you in the room. We're not. Dude, you are rattled, and you're not selling anybody right now."
Clearly, you do.
Yeah.
Or you don't say shit like that.
Right.
What are you getting upset about?
Right.
That you don't listen to?
I didn't hear that shitty thing you said about me.
Exactly. And my dad.
yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, man. It's going to be fascinating.
Like in the fortune cookie, may you live in interesting times, Matt.
Oh. I've had enough of interesting times.
Yeah.
I'd like to live in some dull times.
Yeah, well, I think the cap going up, keep the GM, change the coach.
That was a bummer for me, too. Florida, Carolina in the Eastern Final. That's not going to help push that cap up as fast as I want it to.
Yeah, no. That is less than, and just interesting to see Saturday night. Is the legend of Jake Ottinger slightly tarnished?
Oh yeah,
we couldn't hear enough after the regular season in the first round about what a stud that guy is with his stars and stripe pads from the outdoor game at World Juniors. Never liked him then.
No.
But anyways, just interesting, something to watch moving
Seattle's
forward.
hanging around, man.
Man, hanging around like a bad fart.
So are we. 8 years, man, of bad farts here on the Tall Can Audio podcast.
Fresh cigars, or cigars and fresh farts. That's what it is.
Yeah.
8 years, baby.
Not too bad.
Here's looking at you, kid.
It's been a hell of a run. We'll say thank you here to Brian, who got us up and running, and brought you
with
into
all our errors.
And there were many.
Many.
And there still are. Just
None.
and also a voice who continues to bring us into many episodes. Same to Amy, who was around early days and introduced those, or introduced many shows. Maddie Lang, doing those late night runs. Getting those "Hey, you up?" texts from the last person he wants to be getting
It's
them
booty
from.
call. It's booty call audio version.
So we appreciate that. Shrides and Vanessa, who've stepped in later on. Bunda and Creech have done some, some pretty regular appearances here.
My man Nate Sager.
Yeah, early days. Nate Sager made sure the podcast was not one of the people who died. That's a way back cut. And it's been a hell of a run. Rob's been here for, this is 11, 16, 7, 8, 900 of these things.
Yeah, 850. I'm putting it at 850.
All right, I think that's probably about right. So it's been a lot of fun, and thank you to you, whether you jumped in recently or inexplicably have been here since day one. We appreciate it.
Thanks for your bad taste.
Thanks for your bad taste. I'm suddenly uncomfortable with how that came off. We'll wind this one down here. For Rob, my name is Matt. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
There's only so much time we can kill here before we start to spin our wheels. I've had time to run, but I'm still here. You can't imagine how that feels. Watch us while we spin our wheels.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe to Tall Can Audio on your favorite podcast app and find us on social media at Tall Can Audio.